Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the West Lindsey series. This is one of the 9 districts of Lincolnshire and one of the county's most rural. It has 128 civil parishes. Let's see which one this episode's all about. Oh, it's windy just here. Hope you can hear me. Welcome back to West Lindsey, everybody. We're on top of a hill here. Now, we've seen RAF bases before, plenty of them. This place is all about the RAF. Welcome to Brookenby. The West Lindsey series is sponsored by Gainsborough Cycles 01427 617 752. For all your cycling needs, this is your one-stop shop, located at 20 Ropery Road or online at gainsboroughcycles.com. There's a link in the description. Gainsborough Cycles, ask for Trevor Halstead. And this video is also sponsored by Jamie's Fitness Studio, based on Low Road, Greyingham, near Curtin in Lindsey. Jamie is one busy lady. Check her out by calling 07906 749 574 or emailing hello@jamies.co.uk. Online membership is available. There's a link to her Facebook page in the description. Jamie's Fitness Studio. Get fit, get happy, get healthy. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Welcome to Brookenby on the Lincolnshire Wolds, which sits around a mile away from the village of Binbrook, which is over the border and into East Lindsey. Brookenby and Binbrook may have similar names, but as villages they couldn't be more different. Binbrook is arguably much more historic because Brookenby hasn't been around for all that long. It was never built to be an actual village. Rather, it was constructed as RAF married quarters, similar to the ones at Scampton and Hemswell Cliff. The RAF base it was built for was RAF Binbrook, which was operational between 1940 and 1992. The base was associated with the Royal Australian Air Force as well as our very own Air Force. RAF Binbrook is also famous for the English Electric Lightnings, providing a home for the last 2 RAF Lightning squadrons, 5 and 11. Brookenby became a village when the base closed, and it acquired its name in the 1980s. RAF Binbrook falls within the parish boundaries, and as such, a lot of Brookenby's buildings were originally used by the Air Force. These include the Sergeant's Mess, which has been converted into a whole host of things, including the village's church. There are plenty of abandoned buildings around the place too, one of which we'll get a look at on this walk. There's so much history in this place, and it's pretty unique too. So let's get walking and see what Brookenby can tell us about life in the RAF on the Lincolnshire Wolds. Before we begin to understand Brookenby, we first have to talk about RAF Binbrook. This is directly adjacent to the village and falls within the parish boundaries. Now closed, RAF Binbrook was primarily used by Bomber Command in World War II. It was opened in June 1940. There were several squadrons stationed here. These included numbers 12 and 142 from 1940 until 1942, when the base closed temporarily in order to install 3 concrete runways. It reopened in 1943 and provided a home for number 460 Squadron of the Royal Australian Air Force. Binbrook is also famous for English Electric Lightnings. They moved here in 1965 and 1972 with numbers 5 and 11 squadrons respectively, the last 2 RAF Lightning squadrons. For some time, RAF Binbrook contained the Lightning F6XR724, a preserved example of the iconic Cold War fighter in full engine running condition. Of course, all the former RAF housing, the married quarters, is what we now know as Brookenby, a name which only came about in the 1980s. It was named after a nearby abandoned village or plague village. Now a village in its own right, some of Brookenby's features make use of former RAF buildings. In a few moments, we'll be seeing how some of them have been repurposed. First though, we're heading around the back of this old shop to find an H block. There are several of these on the base. Most of them are fenced off and inaccessible, but this one isn't. It's completely wide open and a footpath runs alongside it. H blocks were built as accommodation, and they're a common sight on RAF bases up and down the land. You might remember we came across some in Hemswell. This one is of course long abandoned, and you can tell there's been more than a few urban explorers who have ventured inside. As tempting as that is, that's not my thing. Well, that's amazing. I didn't expect to get up close and personal with one of these H blocks. There must be 4 or 5 of these all in a line. This is the first one, the sort of furthest south towards the main Brookenby village. And I never expected to be able to get that close to it because I thought they were all fenced off. This one, for some strange reason, isn't. But there is a fence around the back of this which prevents you from getting to the other ones. Of course, I don't want to venture inside this because obviously I don't want to... I'm not an urban explorer. I don't want to trespass. Yeah, anyway, it's cool that we can see one of these H blocks up close and personal. Right, let's turn around at this point and head this way and find perhaps one of the strangest churches you ever did see. What we're doing now is walking around the back of the old sergeant's mess. This takes us past some allotments, and that'll keep the fans happy for another day. As we get to this corner, we can see some more H blocks. Notice the fence between us and them. Everything beyond that is private land. Around the front, here's Brookenby's church, and no, I'm not joking. It's based in the west wing of the sergeant's mess. It forms part of the Walesby group of churches. Dedicated to St Michael and All Angels, it was established in the 1990s when the building was converted to serve the newly formed village of Brookenby. Right next door is another part of the mess. This is the Brookenby Community Centre. This is the base of a local drama society named the Limelight Theatre Group. On the theatre wall we have a parish notice board. Can you believe we're down to less than 30 in West Lindsey now? It's madness. Mark it off, folks. Now, handily, this notice board has got a map on it, and this shows you what's public and what's off limits. So here is Brookenby Village. Everything you can see that's got a road name, that is 100% public. We are here where it says PW. That's the church building just there, and I'm stood right outside this building underneath the PW, the theatre. And I have been so far up here, around here to this H block. That's the one that was all open, and come around the back of this, and the fence runs sort of here-ish, so you can't get to all of this. This is all off limits, as is this as well. Despite the fact that says museum, you can't go up there unless you have permission, or at least that's how I understand it. So the rest of my route will take me sort of around this sort of residential area before coming back up Swinhope Road to where I began. Up here, this is all residential as well. This is definitely all public. I will drive through this as I go towards my next one, but that's basically Brookenby Village and the former RAF Binbrook. Now, before I just leave this area behind, I'll just take you across to the green where I was a moment ago, because there's a war memorial here. Here we go. It's just a simple stone, and it says in memory of Binbrook Airfield, opened 1940 and closed in 1992, and this is dedicated to all units and personnel based here. This was unveiled in 2014. There you go, and it's right outside the church, which is there, and the theatre, which is there. And there you go. Let's continue walking around the rest of the village. Let's head to the main gates of RAF Binbrook. The station closed as a main operating base in the 1980s, although it continued as a relief landing ground for RAF Scampton into the early 1990s before eventually closing in 1992. It was subsequently sold off for development. This large white building was the guard room. The base's former control tower and adjacent fire section were demolished in 1995. In the mid-90s, Lincolnshire Police and Humberside Police used the site to teach riot control techniques to its police officers. Here's a fun fact too. In 1989, alongside RAF Little Rissington, RAF Binbrook served as a US airbase for filming the 1990 movie Memphis Belle. Outside the gates, there's a play area which has a nice backdrop in the form of the Wolds. Let's continue with the walk. As we make our way towards Swinhope Road, we head through a typical square of a style often found within former RAF Married Quarters. So I'm willing to bet you've noticed there's some similarities between Brookenby and some of the other RAF bases we've been to, like Hemswell and like Scampton. One thing that sets this one apart from the others though is the fact that it's on a hill, and this means you get this kind of view. And I do apologise for the wind, but you know, I'm on a hill. Like I said at the top, it's going to be windy. The last part of this walk is a straight amble up Swinhope Road. Here's a bus stop, but there are no services that stop here. The number 25 used to though. Not every property in the village is former RAF housing. Whilst Swinhope Road does show us some more examples, there's a small cul-de-sac coming up of new builds. That would be Orford Close, which is named after Orford, a tiny hamlet between Brookenby and Binbrook. Orford Bridge, located there, crosses Waith Beck. Brookenby has some green spaces if you know where to look. There's the big one that I was stood on a moment ago, and there's this one too, just after Orford Close. As you climb the hill back to where we began, the scenery to your right becomes more and more amazing. We are, of course, still on the Wolds. It's hard to imagine back in the 1940s an area like this would have been awash with RAF personnel and various bomber aircraft, but that's the uniqueness of RAF Binbrook. Okay, and we've made it back to the start. That's the full walk around Brookenby. An RAF base and the Lincolnshire Wolds, two things that are quintessentially West Lindsey. Okay, we're not quite done because, as I promised at the map earlier, I will take you now around the other part that's residential in the car. I think though it's just generally more of the same, but you never know. Let's go and find out. To your left here is the former site of the officers' mess, which has now been demolished, something which came as a relief to some locals, but others were sad to see it go. As I suspected, the rest of this area is pretty much more of the same. As such, this little drive will lead directly into an extended rest of section. Enjoy! And just to the north of Brookenby, you would be very mistaken to think that this park here, Kingsmead Park, is within Brookenby's boundaries. It's not. You go over the boundary with Swinhope to get to this one, and guess what? That is the next episode. So I'll see you back here in 7 days' time to start the parish of Swinhope. But for now, this has been the parish of Brookenby, and I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.